Hello and welcome back. It's Michael again from Sweet Like Money. Sweet Like Money is a blog that I use to document my journey to financial freedom while educating and inspiring my community to live more financially intentional lives, build wealth and legacies for their families, and ultimately enjoy the sweet life of financial freedom. So I'm coming here with part 2 of the student loan series. So last time I talked about having $92,000 in student loan debt and how I got there, why I got that much student loans. And this episode, I'm going to continue to expand on the mistakes that I've made. So there are 8 major mistakes that I made that accumulated my debt to $92,000. So I want you to avoid those mistakes. Or if you have already made those mistakes, I want you to connect with me and know you're not alone, and we can pay them off together and ultimately enjoy the sweet life of financial freedom. So the first mistake that I made was getting student loans in the first place. Like, there's so many opportunities out there for us to fund a college education that we don't take advantage of. So I didn't get I got $15,000 in scholarships and grants, and that was pure laziness on my end. You can start getting scholarships at a very young age. I have a 12-year-old. He is in 7th grade. By the time next year, we are going to be aggressively applying for scholarships and grants, because you can start at a very early age, but there are so many opportunities to fund a college education that you can take advantage of. So get out there and start researching. I'll leave some of the resources that I found for scholarships and grants starting at a very young age. I'll leave some of those in the blog post that you can check out on sweetlikemoney.com. So the second mistake that I made was getting more student loans than I needed. So I talked to you in the first video about how college only cost me, both my undergrad and my master's degree only cost me $50,000, but somehow I've almost doubled that. How is that possible? So I also talked about using refund checks as like my annual bonuses in a way to fund my lifestyle. So the second mistake that I made was just getting more student loans than I needed. So even if I didn't apply for those scholarships and grants, I didn't have to get as much debt or as many loans out that I could have paid off much quicker. So if you absolutely have to get student loans, if there's no other way for you to fund your college education and you have to get student loans, because a college education, I believe, is really important. And I'll talk about that in the next video, the good, the bad, and the ugly of my student loans. But I think a college education is important. So if you have to get student loans, just take out the bare minimum, exactly what you need to fund your education. No more, no less. If you get more, pay it off immediately because you don't need it. So that's the second mistake that I made. The third mistake that I made was waiting so long to start paying them off. So let's talk about this a little bit. I started college in 2005, and that's when I started my undergraduate degree. And I did not start paying on those until 2016, maybe. So 10 years passed before I even started paying on them. So let me tell you how I did that so you can avoid doing that. I'm not trying to give you any secrets so that you can jump through loopholes and you don't have to pay your student loans, but just so you can avoid these mistakes. So while you're in college, you don't have to pay on your student loans. They don't send you any bills. You don't have to pay on them at all. So I went to college for my undergrad, and I didn't have to pay my student loans. And then I got deferments and forbearances. And then I decided to go to graduate school. So entering school again, you don't have to pay on your student loans again. And then I graduated in 2014. So after you graduate, you get like a 6-month grace period or something. That 6-month grace period landed me in 2015, where I then got more forbearance and deferments. So I didn't actually start paying on them until 2016. So all that time that I wasn't paying on them though, interest was accruing. So it was just adding additional amounts to my student loan, to my principal. So that was the third mistake that I made. So the fourth mistake that I made were those forbearance and deferment. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with what those are, but they are like a temporary hold on repayment of your loan, and you can get them for different reasons, like hardship. You can't really afford to pay your student loans. While you're doing that, depending on if you are getting a forbearance or a deferment, interest is still accruing. And so I believe in deferment, interest does not accrue on certain loans. So if you absolutely have to use those resources, then just make sure you're researching and you're figuring out exactly what's going to happen in the meantime. So if you're able to defer them and you don't have to pay interest on them, great. But if you do have to pay interest on there, my recommendation is that you pay at least the interest each month so that your principal doesn't continue to increase like mine did. So the next mistake that I made was consolidating my loans. So hear me out. There is a time where you will use this resource, and it will be beneficial to you. But for me, it was not. And let me tell you why. So I had so many student loans. I don't even remember how many there were, but there were some who had an interest rate of 6.8. So that was the highest. And there were some that had an interest rate of like 4%. I think as low as like 3.5 actually. The reason why I consolidated was because I was getting several bills in the mail telling me that I had to pay on each one of them, and I couldn't afford that. I called and got information about consolidating. So that takes all of those many student loans that you have and just consolidates them into one loan where you now only pay one payment each month. But in doing that, they take all of those loans, they add them together, and then they take an average of all of your interest rates, and now your interest rate is that average. So I told you I had interest rates as high as 6.8, and I had interest rates as low as 3.5. Well, when they average them out, my interest rate is now 6%. So sounds amazing, right? The 6.8% that I had now is down to 6%. But those loans that had 3.5%, they were my highest loans. And I could have been very strategic on how I was going to pay them off. If I had all of those different loans with all those different amounts and all those different interest rates, I could have said, okay, I'm going to pay off the loans with the highest interest rates first. Get those out of the way so that I don't end up paying more in the end. So the benefit of not consolidating is that you can strategically pay off the loans in a way where you're saving yourself money because of the interest rate. So that was another mistake that I made. I encourage you that if you absolutely have to consolidate, or if you want to learn more about consolidating, that you review and run the numbers before you make the decision. Don't make the decision blindly. Figure out how much you will save doing one or the other. If you don't save anything and it's just a wash, you don't pay more, you don't save more, then do it. But if you're saving more doing one or the other, then that's my recommendation. Okay. So the next mistake is also arguably, a good thing, but for me, it wasn't. So it was the income-driven base plan. So what that is that for federal loans, you have the option of making payments on your loan based on a plan that they have. So they have plans based on your income. So it's, pay as you earn. So as you earn more money in your career, you start paying more, or it's revised pay as you earn. Like there's many different options that you can find all online. So because I couldn't afford, or I felt like I couldn't afford, I could have afforded these student loan payments, but I wanted to focus on other things. So, I could have done things like live more frugally in order to pay them off faster, but I didn't. So anyway, I entered into an income-based driven plan. And so the mistake in this was I was only paying that minimum balance. So I'm just throwing numbers out there. Let's just say what I'm supposed to pay is $600 a month. But with the income-driven base plan, I only have to pay $300 a month. So I'm just paying the minimum balance, paying $300 a month. Well, does that $300 cover the interest? In my case, it didn't. So let's say, still throwing the same numbers, I'm supposed to pay $600. With the income-driven base plan, I only have to pay $300, but my interest is accruing at $400 a month because your interest accrues each day. So I'm paying $300, so that adds $100 on top of my balance. Same numbers, $50,000 loan, $600 is what you should pay. $300 is what you pay on the income-driven base. $400 is your interest. So paying $300 a month, that additional $100 goes on top of that $50,000 loan, and now your loan is $50,100. The next month, you pay $300. That additional $100 goes on top of that. So now your principal balance is $50,200. So now it's $50,200. So each month, the amount that you're not paying in full interest is just adding to your principal balance, which is what happened in my case. So if you have to get on an income-driven base plan, I recommend that you talk to your servicer and you figure out how much the interest accrues each month, and you pay that amount. So the 7th mistake that I made was going to a private school. So I talked about this in my first video, but I moved to Texas, and I moved to Texas for good reason. I wanted to be close to my family. But when I moved there, I decided to go to a private school. And the only reason I decided to go to this school is because I would hear everyone say how amazing the school is. It was like I would say, oh, I'm going to UIW, or I'm thinking about going to UIW. And people were like, oh my gosh, it's such a prestigious school. That's amazing. You should absolutely do that. And I just wanted people to look at me like, oh, she's prestigious. So I went to this private school. And ultimately, like, I didn't learn anything that I didn't learn in my other school, my public school. I didn't make any more contacts or network I didn't do anything. Actually, it hurt me. So not only did it cost me more, but I didn't even really research and look into how my credits would transfer over, which they didn't, because my original school was on quarters. This private school was on semesters. So when I transferred over, all of my credits didn't transfer over completely. So I still needed 0.25 of a credit for each class that I had taken. So that ultimately was like a wash. I was not going to take all of those classes over again. And so I decided to move back to Ohio to finish school. So my recommendation, my suggestion to you is go to a school that, number one, has your major. So you have to be prepared before you go to college and know exactly what you want to do. So number two, go to a school that has the courses that you need. And ultimately, when I got a job out in the real world, no one looked at my transcript and said, oh my gosh, you went to UIW, or oh my gosh, you went to a private school. All they looked at was the fact that I had a degree. And then the 8th mistake, the last mistake that I made, was going to school without a passion or plan. So I talked about it in the first video, how I went to school. So originally I went to school for nursing, and going back and forth, and how the credits didn't transfer. By the time I went back to Ohio, I was told, oh, you can get your degree with only a semester more of credits, and you'll have your psychology degree. I had no interest in psychology. So actually, I was just wasting away at years and money during the first couple years of my college life, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't have a plan. If you are strategic with a plan and you decide which courses you need to take to get the degree that you want, research how much money you will make in this degree, how easily you will get a job with this degree, and make a plan that way. That way it saves you so much more money. So coming out of college, I did get a job right away, but it has nothing to do with my undergrad. Nothing. So figure out what your passion is, what you really want to do in life, and go to school for those things. If you don't know what you want to do, because at the time I had no clue, go to junior colleges and take the basic courses that you need for, in general, while you're still researching and finding what you want to do, what your passion is in life. So those are the 8 mistakes that I made so that you can avoid those mistakes. Drop in the comments below what mistakes you made that that resulted in you getting student loan debt and accumulating student loan debt over years. So I want to hear your stories. Drop in the comments. You can also check out the blog post on sweetlikmoney.com and leave me a comment about the mistakes that you made. Let's start this conversation. Let's be open and honest with each other, and let's encourage each other to move forward. So you can connect with me on Instagram at sweetlikmoneyblog. You can also connect with me on Facebook at sweetlikmoney. You can send me an email at contact@sweetlikmoney.com, and you can check out the website at sweetlikmoney.com. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please stay tuned for the next video where I talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of my student loans. I know you want to hear what's so good about them because it's hard to find the positive in student loans. But check out that video next, and please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you next time. Goodbye.